Oh, yeah! Happy Comic Book Day, and thank you to Bad Mary for that too sweet playing. Welcome, all you four-color funny book aficionados. This is U.S. Comics Cast, Chapter 2, Episode 8, Snowman. That's appropriate. 2 topics, 60 minutes for the people. I'm John Rivera, the CEO and co-founder of U.S. Comics.
And if he is the CEO, that must make me the COO and other co-founder of U.S. Comics, also as well as your Long Island Lothario, your comic book reaper, your delightful bitch, Charlie Boom Boom Copyright Infringement Rivera.
Dude, oof. I'm just texting my lawyer right now because, oh man.
I
Oh.
liked it.
I have been infringed upon. I love it.
Took it.
My own fault. I sent you over the copy. I don't know what I was thinking, but good call by you.
I took it. I remixed it. Now I own it. I am the Carlos Mencia of podcasting.
Oh.
So watch out if you got a good podcast.
Oof,
I'm a
goof.
snipe subject matters. My dear brother.
I am calling Joe Rogan right now. You're in big trouble.
His ass is frozen. He was so happy to leave California.
Whatever, bro.
Now it's happening.
He still kicks hard. Even frozen to death. He will
that I believe.
The soul out of your chest. Charlie. Happy Comic Book Day, son.
Happy Comic Book Day, man. How's everything going on your end?
You know what? I rightly cannot complain. It is snowing like it is the Hoth system right now. It doesn't want to seem to stop. But hey, you know what? With the snow, on the winds of snow, come change, bro. Come change. Every once in a while, something will come through on the newswire that picks you up. You know, we just had the new Lois and Clark series start. Yes. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to watch it. Poor Tiger Woods cannot catch a break. Do not ever lend Tiger Woods the keys to your car. You will definitely regret it. So there's just like news upon news upon news. But I got to say, and this squeezed that Latinx pride gene that I knew was in there someplace. Where is it? I knew it was in there someplace. It was hiding behind my pancreas. It was like dangling from the luvia. Whatever. It was in there someplace. Charlie, let me ask you this question. Can you fly?
If you need me to, Listen, certainly can.
I love that go-get-'em attitude, but you know who definitely can fly?
Tell me now.
Boys and girls, our new Supergirl, the first Latinx Supergirl, Sasha Calle. Oh, huepa! I was so excited.
We came for it. We came for it, baby. We came for the S. We came for it. Got it around my neck tonight.
Yes,
got it around my neck tonight, baby.
Nice.
Dude, I cannot tell you the surge of energy from this casting. Now, this isn't a flick that necessarily I was dying to see on opening night.
Flash?
I got my day. I mean, it's a comic book movie. I would go see it.
Yeah, of course.
The degrees of excitement is what I'm talking about. And if when Flash winds up being released, if it is on HBO Max, the second it's available, I'm logging in. I'll fight that digital traffic. If the world is in some semblance of normal and it is safe to go to the movie theaters, give me that opening night ticket because I am going to support. I'm going to support big. This is one of those times, and I understand some people don't necessarily get why Black Panther meant a little bit more to some members of that audience than others. I totally understand that. But you're talking about someone who wears his love of vibe on his shoulder because...
For better or for worse.
You know what? For the first time in a long time, absolutely for better or for worse. But for now, I get a Kryptonian that could look like one of my cousins, which is super exciting.
Sure.
It's also a weird thing to say because every Supergirl could have looked like one of my cousins. My family tree is every shade imaginable.
Your family tree, our family tree, I should say, is very Kryptonian at the very best. Yeah, it was just really, for me at least, it was exciting news to say the least, because the whole firsts and knocking down doors and flying through glass ceilings, all that bit, notwithstanding, um, it just was so unexpected. It was just one of those. It was Christmas morning. You done unwrapped everything like an animal, just like little gift monsters. You gone through everything, and you're sitting back on the couch and you're trying to decide what to play with first. And then all of a sudden, you get the nudge, and somebody points out the Red Rider BB gun with a compass in the stock and this thing which tells time behind the Christmas tree that somehow you missed. It was the gift that you did not expect.
And for me, and from what I, it was such a 1-2 punch for me. One, I had no idea Supergirl was going to be in what's clearly turning out to be like very clearly a Flashpoint type movie.
Yeah, but we knew that.
Yeah, but I wasn't expecting, like, the cup runneth over. A couple weeks ago, we were talking about how Spider-Man made me nervous because they're adding all these villains and
Right.
heroes. But now Flash kind of
Chicken.
doing a very similar formula. This announcement came, and it came in such a delightful package for me. I didn't just see a tweet about it. I saw a tweet that included a video where I got to see the moment
Yeah.
someone's dreams came true. Your
The
close
red,
friend,
white, and blue, red,
yeah,
yellow, and blue dreams.
and we had, we've come close to this. You have a close friend who's now just crushing it on stars, and I'm sure we'll talk about that more. But
Boy, Charlie's super excited about this topic. I'm sorry,
I,
folks. Woo!
it's just
We have to get like the EKG monitor reading on the screen for the visual. Holy
absolutely.
crap.
It's just so friggin' cool and so exciting. And in a world where we're seeing more and more people kind of extend out that bubble of what a superhero looks like, um, which is again odd to say because I think on screen she's going to look as super girly as any of the supergirls that
Sure, sure,
preceded
sure, sure.
and
Well,
probably
think
will
about
follow
all
her.
of the actors that have played every role under the sun, that have had ethnic or national backgrounds, that as an audience member, you just had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many movies that I've sat through of Oscar Isaacs before I realized Homeboy, again, Homeboy could be at a cousin family reunion.
Yeah.
And that list goes on, especially when you're talking about an industry where changing one's last name or anglicizing one's name is the norm. Like it's almost becomes like expected.
Yeah.
And also in an industry where even Latinx, Hispanics, Hispanic roles, or whatever term you want to put on them, have often in the past been played by non-Latinx, non-Hispanic, Spanish performers, where that almost becomes like a norm. Like you don't think of it. When I sat down for Zorro, back in 2000 or whatever, Sir Anthony Hopkins represented as Zorro, and I was all about it.
Yeah.
I never for one moment sat back and thought, I wonder why this is not a Latino, a Latinx, a Hispanic performer. Now, in 2000 and woke, sometimes you will sit back and think like, yeah, I love Anthony Hopkins, but there certainly were other options. I wonder why, and that's a whole different topic. But that all being said, we have come to the point now where somebody, and this is not brand new, like Susan was played by a Latinx actor. We have had characters played by Latinx performers in the past that did not necessarily need to be. And this is again another example of it,
Yeah.
but it's just very exciting. This
It's
is a
just
young
so
performer
cool.
who goes from a soap opera to and again largely known on Spanish language
Yeah.
television. But she's like an unknown to the
Yeah.
majority, and she's putting on the crest. She's gonna take to the sky.
Yeah, and there's something so special still about that symbol beyond the in canon it means hope, beyond being a family sigil. There is something that that S represents that speaks to a certain level of quality. She is going to forever be part of the Superman story, and
Sure.
that story extends out to Kara or whichever of the Supergirls she's going to wind up playing. And there's the thing I love most about that is this is an example of, well, Kryptonians have a certain look traditionally, and
How said that?
well, I'm just saying in the pages of the comics
Oh,
they look a certain way, and she doesn't fight that. There's not It's not a situation where the actor playing the part won't necessarily inform how they play the part. Supergirl is Supergirl. Whereas if you made suddenly Bruce Wayne a black man or a black
which
woman,
they have.
which they certainly have, it does vastly change the character. And a lot of times, and again,
Well, we're kind of veering off the road like Tiger Woods himself. That's not the conversation that I thought we would be having. But um, just to kind of speak to that point, so we can have the conversations we wanted to have. Um, that has more to do with your writing, right? So
yeah,
if you want to have your story be about experiences or like a unique reality as opposed to anyone else, right? Because if you are a Puerto Rican, guy walking around in the middle of Bangladesh,
yeah,
right? You're going to have a different experience than you are in, say, the Bronx. So, so again, that really lends towards more, I think, storytelling. And obviously, any story that's worth telling should be told for a particular reason, right? Well, we've had this conversation before. If I'm going to regale you with Once Upon a Time, at the end of it, there should have been something learned. There should have been an exchange, at least of opinion, even if as the audience, as the viewer, as the reader, you don't personally agree with it. That's fine. But as the storyteller, as the creator, I at least have used my platform to tell you this is what I think. Now, whether you agree with me or not, that's entirely up to you. Whether your opinion has changed, if you thought one thing and now after consuming my content, you now feel a different way, that's great. That's hopefully the goal. And if you know what, and if it stays with you after the fact, the best stories. I'll stick with this to my dying day. The best stories teach us. They give us something that we walk away from. That damn it, we didn't even realize. We didn't even realize. It's like one of those things where they slip in somebody drinking a Pepsi where the glass is just like all beaded with condensation and the ice is rattling around in that perfect way. And you're sitting there and you didn't walk in thinking thirsty. You didn't sit down thinking, I'm a little parched. I could really use something, really something to quench my thirst. But what you saw on the screen or on the on TV or even listening to it, they put that thought in your mind. That can be used for capitalist gains. That can be used for pure good, also. So that's where I'm at.
I just
I
love
hope
it.
that people consume it, and it's one of those things where it's not doesn't necessarily need to be blasted in their ear for somebody like you or I, where it's personal. We love to
Yeah,
hear it, but that's not the reason why people I think will go to see it per se. But they'll walk away, hopefully, with that without necessarily having that message. We can be anything.
yeah.
They're gonna walk away with that message without having to think about it or like, do I want to believe that or not? They're just gonna believe it because they saw it.
Absolutely. And the one big point I want to make about this casting, and a big part of the reason I'm so excited,
Yeah.
just to take a quick partial sidestep, one of the things I do is I do work with a charity group in the goofiest way possible. We dress up as Ghostbusters. We got the proton
I'm
packs.
shocked.
We have the car decorated. I'm wearing one of the Ghostbuster jackets today for a kind of specific reason, and that's my name tag here. When we do these events, we don't we don't act like we're, Peter, Ray, Winston, and Egon. We're ourselves who happen to be Ghostbusters. And the best moment I ever had, the one moment I had at a Comic-Con type event where I knew I would do this for as long as I could until the wheels fell off the Ecto one, was a
Which you
kid
have.
came up. Yeah, a kid came up just so excited because we had the same last name, and it was very similar to every kid that ever ran up to me and wanted a hug or wanted a photo or wanted to poke at the proton pack. This had an extra layer, that little something extra of this kid was young enough that he bought into the whole nonsense of
Mhm.
maybe we actually hunt ghosts, and suddenly someone with his last name was rocking the khaki, was rocking the nuclear accelerator, the whole nine.
I gotta step in uh off sides here. Did he not see Extreme Ghostbusters as a kid?
He
What
didn't.
are
He
you
was too
doing
young.
with your little miserable young stupid life?
I would have slipped him the
Send him
extreme
home.
ghost. I would have slipped him the extreme Ghostbusters VHS tapes because it's never been released officially on DVD. But Jess would have made me charge. So instead, I just gave him a pat on the head and told him to check out YouTube. But again, I am so excited about this casting. I am so excited
We
about this
know.
movie
You know who else
even
knows?
more. The
The
world.
EQ knows exactly how excited
All right,
Charlie is
first
about
of
this
all,
character.
your goofy settings are not the settings of my EQ.
Woof, my
As the
goof.
producer, I have another question for you
Woo.
there, Slappy. And
Do
that
it.
question is, we
Slappy, tell me.
announced we have a competition, we have a contest about sharing a post coming up. Do we have any other news? Do we have more info on that? What is the US Comics news this
Charlie,
week?
are you officially asking me what's going on in US Comics this week?
Yep.
Well, that's a good call. And once again, shockingly, Charlie just buried my lead in the backyard with a little bit of lie and a short handle shovel. Because indeed, I was going to remind everyone that the pins are en route as we speak. They are fighting the weather to get here in our grubby, appreciative little hands. So they're on the way. Now, all that's left for you to do, beloved listener, adored viewer, throw in another adjective that you can pull out of thin air. We love you. Show your love in return. Reciprocate, suckers. Go ahead and share, earn yourself a dope US Comics Griffin pin. We will send it out your way with a kiss and a smile. Mwah, mwah. That's all that's going on, Charlie.
I couldn't be more excited. The From what you've shown me, that pin
Yeah,
is. I'm ready to.
fire.
I'm gonna make a new profile to share, and you're gonna be suspicious of the address, and that's okay as long as I can get my grubby little hands on that pin.
Yeah, security will be confirming all of the shares. So, Charlie, watch your ass.
Fair enough. I think I am security though. I think that falls under one of my many jobs. But my friend, my brother,
Bad news,
my
brother. It's Jessica. So you are
oh
not going to get anything past the
yeah,
goalie on that one, my friend.
I am in trouble in that regard. My dear brother,
Work.
start my timer. I got rants a coming. I was happy. I'm about to be sad.
Charlie, before we do any topic, you know there's something that's got to get done.
Oh, how
Han
dare
shot
I?
first, mother sucker. Put it up. Cheers and knock it back.
Salut.
I don't know what I'm doing. Every Han shot is a double gulper. Woo!
Any time that you don't have to spit some out of your nose, that
Zoinks.
is a success for
Oh,
the Han
man.
shot.
You're not kidding. All right, Charlie. So your time starts. Now.
What the hell is going on, DC Comics? Uh, there have been so many
We
rumors.
just told you what was going on. They cast a Latinx
I'm
Supergirl. Come
not
on, bro.
talking about the cinematic side.
Oh,
We know that side's safe. But there have been rumors and innuendo now for months and weeks and what feels like years about potentially the comic publishing rights being sold off. It seems like they may no longer be interested in producing their own four color funny books, but that's not my topic. My topic is how did we get one of the big two even sniffing that reality? John, you know I love me a good continuity, right?
sure.
Is that fair to say? Is it equally fair to say I hate reboots and restarts more than anything?
Well, yes, I would say so.
What if I told you they managed to put everything in a pot, stir it up, and somehow make it worse than I could have imagined?
Eh, DC is they've become infamous for the restart. Like I'm not sure precisely why they feel the need to consistently be restarting. Now, what's funny to me, and I'm gonna let you rant away, my friend. Um, but as dominant as Marvel has been on the big screen, and now certainly with its entry into Disney Plus, it can
WandaVision.
it it seems like the dominance is going to continue on the small screen as well. Um, I don't know why DC feels the need to consistently restart when their comic books are consistently better, right? We live in a society, for whatever reason, for good or for bad, for right or for wrong, where it has to be Pepsi or Coke, right? You can't just have it. Want to drink? Want to have a Coke?
I
Go to
just want a
Dairy Queen,
cola.
have a drink, knock it back. I'll have a liter of cola. You have to be Elvis or the Beatles. You can't be both. So it's consistently, it's one or the other. Now in the theaters, there's no debate. I don't
It's
care
not
who the
even
fuck you
close.
are. You can have a spit curl and be from Krypton, and I will disagree with you, even though you can punch me through the wall without breaking a sweat. Marvel beats DC's poor, defenseless, misbegotten ass in the theaters. But I think that it is just as much of a dominance on the four color funny books. DC has consistently, and then I'm talking about recently. I'm not going all the way back. And
Yeah.
granted, you might have your favorite Marvel monthly installment, but collectively, I'm talking about if you're forced to put them in a cage and close the door and say two entities enter, one entity leaves, DC comic books have been consistently better than Marvel's. Why then, if that's the case, and that is the case, why the fuck does DC continue to try to reinvent the wheel?
The worst part is, at least from my point of view, this success comes kind of despite themselves. They stumble upon success, even with the worst parts of a lot of people absolutely loathed and despised the new 52. Gems came out of the new 52. DC Rebirth was then the next thing. They had so many dumb ideas forced into our faces. It is so difficult sometimes reading as many comics as I do when I look at other companies, smaller companies, Boom Studios, the work they've done in the last 5 years has always been consistently good. Not this diamond in the rough, or diamonds amongst turds that sometimes exist in the DCU. And I think it all
You can copyright that phrase. I have
done.
no
I'm
interest in retaining that gem.
I imagine the poo emoji with like three diamonds sticking out of it.
Whatever works,
It's a
brother.
new shirt available this fall. But the bottom line for me is they can't get out of their own way. And I feel like everyone at DC now, at the comic portion of DC,
Mhm.
just keeps thinking about how amazing Crisis on Infinite Earths was. The problem is, I feel like none of them have read Crisis on Infinite Earths recently. Because when you hold it up pound for pound, I think there are still some people who love it, but I know just as many people who love New Frontier or
Mm.
Kingdom Come, or these books that sit on their own oh so well. And I think there's something to be said about the desire to remedy mistakes. Right? You
Sure.
have
And just
you
just for clarity, because
please.
we did tend to let the tire spin a little bit. Again, specifically, we're talking about Generations Forged,
Yes, a
right? So
brand
this
new
is a
comic
brand new entry.
in
Um,
stores today.
and also, just the last thing I'm going to do pre Charlie rant. Um, One of the things that DC did in kind of like their adjustment, so to speak, which has been tremendously successful, they shrunk down their offerings, right? So they were pumping out so many titles, and
52 to be precise.
you would have a title that would run, and clearly it was intended for either an open-ended run or a long-term run, and a title would disappear after like 2 3 months, after issue 3, after issue 4. There it is. It's completely gone, and then now it's been replaced by something else. And this is when they were pumping out tons of titles, so you couldn't even let a comic grow on you if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
So what they did was they circled the wagons, so to speak, and they boiled it down, almost like a company that's facing chapter 11, which they weren't, don't get me wrong, but a company that's facing chapter 11 says, all right, we're going to boil it down to brass tacks, we're going to get lean. And what they did was they put out a very small limited amount of titles. What I think it was maybe like 11 titles, something like that. And then now here we are, 2021. They've effectively doubled it. So it's like they had a correction, a course correction, which fucking worked. It was one of those situations where, like, you're in a boat and you're taking on water and you start throwing off the fucking luggage, and all of a sudden now you're sailing, and now you're selling tickets. You're like, hey, come on board, like
Yeah.
it's a fucking river cruise. It's not. You fixed an issue. Why then would you rejigger the problem and kind of like, a poke a sleeping dragon? I just don't understand the concept, and this is the way they do it. So Charlie,
Yeah, and
continue.
before I dive specifically into Generations Forge
No,
#1, available now, please read it for yourself. I'm going to limit my spoilers to 2 pages, so it's still worth reading. It's not poorly written, it's action packed. That's part of the problem is I love comic books.
it is
I
very what's the best word? I'll put it this way. I double checked that the link you sent me was up to date. I was like, this has got some. I mean, and this has nothing to do with the retro versions of characters that we saw.
yeah,
I meant the feel of the writing felt
it
very
felt beautifully
retro to me.
classic. Yeah.
Yeah, it felt like
And
an old
it's
JLA comic.
yeah, and that's something I love. And but again, I the last few years have been chaotic in comic books. That's not lost on me. That helped light the fire that hopefully will be US comics. It got to a point where my brother and I just we kept getting so frustrated by things being great, great, great gone, great, great, great abandoned, great, great, great changed. If it was terrible, it seemed to never go away. And so just in recent memory, we had the DC universe has been recontextualized what feels like half a dozen times in the last few
Yeah,
years. We had from
it
before
might be.
Watchmen,
Those numbers might be accurate.
they created the metaverse. I'm checking my notes here. Then because of Dark Knight's death metal, we then had the Omniverse,
Right. And
right?
this is technically part of the Omniverse, if we want to be real
Well,
specific about it.
yeah, it's part of the Omniverse, but it's like
But so are
flattening the
we.
curve of the Omniverse because now in the last 2 pages, of course, while an entity is talking to Bruce, because
Spoiler.
God knows. God knows we couldn't possibly have the secrets of the universe told to any of the demigods, or heaven forbid, one of the young members of the universe. No, no, no. Let's tell Brucey with his retro purple gloves and his way too big ears from the goddamn 90s. We now have the linear verse, which somehow
That's their
takes
answer.
and twists Dan Didio, the former publisher of DC. He had this philosophy when he talked about the characters and he talked to the people writing these characters. And if he had someone come in to write Superman, he said, remember, everything counts. There's someone out there whose favorite version of Clark is fucking electric and has an electric twin wearing red. There's someone whose favorite Clark is from the Legions of Superheroes Superboy. There's people who have this affection and this love for every version of the character. And that philosophy, John, is something I love. I love the idea of take what you need off the shelf. These characters are modern day legends. They're for someone like me, for someone as nerdy as me, who surrounds himself with things that just remind me of great stories and fun stories, for me, Superman is such an important literary character when you have a nod towards something like New Frontier. I love it.
Sure.
However, when he was the publisher of DC Comics, he didn't mean literally make it all count. So the linear verse, spoiler for those of you who have yet to read it, but most likely had
Your
no
comic,
intentions of reading
your
it.
comic shop is going to warn you when you pick it up.
It's just like it's frustrating, the book, because so many pages I loved, and these last two pages killed me. The linear verse,
Can I just say though,
yeah.
how did you have that same meta moment where you're like, is the fucking big bad in this comic uh is this actual Brian Michael Bendis? Like, am I looking at this right?
Just
Is the
peels off a
lighting? I
mask.
know the lighting here in the fortress is a little off today, but I'm like, no, he literally looks like him in the comic.
He
I thought. I'm
does.
like, what the?
It's a little on the nose, but what isn't about? And I promise I'll let you get a word in edgewise. But first of all, the name Linear Verse is the laziest shit I've ever heard. Ever. It is. You might as well just call it the
There were
universe.
they were sitting in a meeting. They're like, all right, we need something for like more of a. The universe that was storytelling to be more linear. So we need some kind of like snappy, catchy, copyrightable linear verse. Yep. All right, that'll work. Moving on.
That is
Or the
a
meeting went like late and second. Fuck it, linear verse it is.
they that was a first idea. That's a first draft. Like, we will come up with a better name for it. But it
Yeah, as a
also
placeholder.
it's also a
Working
wonderfully
title.
it's a wonderfully specific name, because what they mean is from the very first Superman story
Yeah.
and the very first Batman story and Wonder Woman, it all not only counts, my friend, but it happened because in DC, time moves slowly. That's what makes DC Comics so unique. So Batman's been fucking 30 for decades on decades.
Yeah, it's like over. If there was a word for over meta, this is what it would be. It's so it's like it's almost funny, really, to the point where they've got me hook, line, and sinker because I want to see how they are going to backpedal their way out of this.
It
It
doesn't make any
is
sense.
it's so laughably bad after all the good that they have been producing, right? And then they say necessity is the mother of invention. And their condensing of their storytelling produced some of the best storytelling on paper that they have done in a very long time. And I'm not talking about comparing DC to anybody else. I'm comparing DC to DC, which is ultimately, we're all playing a sport against ourselves in life. And as a company, I think it should be the exact same way. Don't compare yourself. The grass isn't greener because of any other reason except that grass has been watered. And the grass that you're standing on, you're too fucking busy looking around at everybody else that the grass is going brown underneath you. So focus on your own shit. And I mean that as an individual, and I certainly mean that as a comic book producing company. Right? Focus on yourself. Don't look around. Don't try to keep up with the Joneses. And for whatever reason, DC has this like a they just have a problem with their self-worth. They've got an inferiority complex for whatever reason. Why? Because your movies aren't fucking, unless a Joker's in it, they're not,
Yeah.
they're not heralded because whatever your reason is, this was a goofy, awful, laughable misstep from where I'm standing.
It's impossible to follow through on. It can't all happen because the way that the DC universe is currently slated, if it ends in Kingdom Come, you have a very specific path.
Well, again, they've restarted so many times that ultimately you have to look and say like, okay, well, where does this linear verse that they're referring to actually start?
Oh no, John,
because
but it starts
you have
everywhere
no,
somehow.
but hold on a second. This is what I'm saying is if all of your stories are continuity, right? Everything is canonical, then all of your restarts, how do you explain the restarts? It's just silly. It's one of those things where had either one of us or any number of the listeners or viewers been in that pitch meeting, like you just would have been like, yes, yes, all the way sitting there in the back in the corner. Like, this is really stupid. This doesn't make any sense. And it's not one of those fun, this doesn't
Yeah.
make any senses, right? Like, we've had these conversations, these car rides, these text exchanges, where we will take something knowing that it stinks on ice. We'll take something we know, some property, some storyline, some whatever that we know is problematic, that we know has warts, and we'll say, "Go ahead, dum dum, fix this." And it's like an open challenge. Charlie, I'm telling you right now, I never want to get that phone call. I never want to take that text. I never want to have that car ride with you where you're like, "Hey, John, fix the linear verse." I'm gonna tell you, go fuck yourself, hit the bricks, and walk home. I'm out.
I
Game
would
over.
argue that you can fix the linear verse by being any of the other fucking restarts or reboots. I'd rather muddle my way through the new 52 again than deal with this horse shit
I'll
that
put it to you like
is
this:
the linear verse.
I would I would rather write the Vibeverse than touch the
Oh,
linear verse.
you know
Yeah.
what I'm calling you about this weekend. Uh, Ultimately, it boils down to this: they cannot follow through with it. Too many people have multiple origins. You cannot do it. And this is once again
It's a bad
just them.
idea.
They're just trying to get people to talk about it. You know what the problem is, John? I don't need to read anything more about the linear verse. That's the problem they don't understand. They tricked me once. And yeah, when they do the new whatever the fuck verse, Ultimate Crisis of Ultimate Multiple Earths, I'll read it. You can have my $4 or $5 once. Or, for God's sakes, have a meeting when I can't help but think back to when they launched the new 52. They had this idea to reboot everything, and then they did it right away. They didn't have additional meetings. They didn't have a plan. They said this will sell some books, and it did sell some books for a
Of
while.
course.
And then they
Anything new is
immediately
gonna
went
sell.
but then they
Anything.
immediately butchered it by rolling it out weeks, not months after the fact. They just jumped right into it, feet first, with no plan. And then they didn't want to erase things from Batman or from the Green Lantern stories. So they were like, well, we're keeping this. Everything else is getting rebooted. And the problem with all of that really boils down to
Oh. Ooh, that is a sound that we have not heard anywhere near enough here in Rangertown, boy. Woo!
oof, we can still live to dream. Johnny
Damn
boy,
straight.
let's pay some bills, baby.
Look, there's really only one thing to say. When you're talking entertainment, when you're talking about Facebook gaming, there is one mother sucker to talk about. He is right here on FBG. It is Sergeant Finesse. 2 streams a day, outstanding gaming content, supporter games, giveaways, contests. He is really, really in his own right now. He is like living on cloud 9 because he has an update, an actual new map coming up on Call of Duty, and also as well as World of Warcraft is doing their next classic iteration, and that's Burning Crusade. So if you
Oh,
have anything
baby.
to say to Sarge Finesse, say it now because he is going to be holed up in the bunker for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. But don't be a sucker. Check him out today. Throw him a like, a follow. You can consider becoming a supporter. It's a good idea. You got to love those stickers. You need to pick me up. Follow the White Rabbit down to sneakenergy.com. Use code SGT at checkout if you want some fresh gear. Ooh, head on down to the Motel America. No, I'm just kidding. That's a fictional place. Go over to geeksunleashed.com. Use code SARGE there. When the Sarge is on deck, you salute. Charlie, take it away.
Absolutely. You can't possibly spend all day watching The Sarge and Us on a never ending loop. You can get through a lot of your day, but what
True.
about when you're showering? You probably don't have a shower curtain like John, where you can slide your iPad in or your laptop or your cell phone. You need music to carry your day. And at the very beginning of the show and at the very end of every show, there is one band that rocks so hard, we throw up that too sweet for them, and that is Bad Mary. You can find them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Bad Mary Band. You can go to their website and buy a t-shirt, a CD, I'm sure a poster at badmary.com. You could just throw fistfuls of digital dollars at them on Patreon. Patreon.com/Bad Mary, where you get exclusive streams and all sorts of goodies. The best part, in my opinion, is you can find their music on every single streaming service. They're big in Japan, they're big here, and they should be a big part of your playlist. Bad Mary, not quite time to take us out, but there's a time for Bad Mary or
You're
a
on
day.
deck. You are on deck. So, Charlie, my boy, how's the blood pressure, man? Is it coming down? Is
I
the
feel good. I feel
EKG
fine.
flattening out a little bit?
I feel fine. It's all
Whew.
good. It's fine.
DC, you can expect to hear from our lawyers because look at what you are doing to this poor child. He is just a baby, and you have been running him ragged, running him through the ringer.
Just
You're fogging up his glasses. Oh,
the
it's okay, Charlie. It's
bipolar, the
okay.
highs and
I know,
lows.
I know, I know.
It's too much.
So all right. So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm going to give you a little bit of a break, Charlie. I want you to take a knee, sit the next couple of plays out, because Daddy Johnny's gonna.
Oh, we're flipping that switch.
Oh
With
yeah.
chunk.
Hit it, yeah, Charlie. Yeah, we're gonna take it down a notch. We're gonna
Oh,
now you're really in for the slow jams. Like 90s R&B. So I do want to take it down a slight notch from Charlie's excitement over the DC shenanigans. I played a lot of catch up. I wasn't feeling too great last couple of days, so I was able to thankfully put that illness to good use. Dropped a couple of new LBs. By expunging them into the toilet from
oh no.
from one way or another. But it did allow me again to do some catching up. And Charlie, I don't know about yourself, but I am all caught up on American Gods. And
I
obviously again we have a very much a dog in the fight, so to speak. We have skin all the way in the game. Are you caught up?
I am caught up now. I'll admit
Good man.
this. Season one and season two of American Gods, I absolutely loved, but I did not watch them weekly. I waited till the season was done and
Hmm.
I binged it. I was so excited for that finale to come out because that meant the following day I was able to start my deep dive where it became all of my entertainment. And I still intend to do that with season three. But when you add Ashley Reyes to the cast, I'm helping that number. I'm
Friend
getting into start
of the show,
overtime.
Ashley Reyes. So we posted about it this week. Ashley was good enough to sit down with us remotely. This was before her American Gods debut, and obviously, as a IRL life, for IRL friend, um, we were super excited,
DC Comics.
dude. ATM machine. Um, we were super excited to hear about her casting because obviously all the gifted performers that she was going to be able to share the screen with and the experience as a whole. No one more deserving, so talented, such a great person. Do we fill all of the butt kissery? Okay, good.
I
So
got more.
we hit that. Well, you're on your own clock. But that being said, we had very much, again, we had a weighted interest into this season. So admittedly, I sat down for my first episode of this third season, and obviously, I just played catch up. But I mean, when it debuted, I sat down, fingers crossed, legs crossed, my ears crossed. I'm like, please, 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 let this be good. Please, I am nowhere near as good an actor as Ashley is. I can't lie to her, be like, oh, that show is so great. If it wasn't, like, she would read me like a proverbial comic book.
Genuinely, I was petrified
Yeah, that's what I'm
watching
saying.
that first
Like
episode.
you, the butterflies, like just be good, just show. I knew Ashley was going to be good. Come hell or high water, I've seen her be excellent in due to productions around her, and also I've seen her be excellent in outstanding productions. I just didn't want this to be the former. So again, I'm all caught up, and we still have a few episodes yet to go. But I have to say, Charlie, that in all sincerity, this is my favorite season thus far. It is so well done. It is stylish. It's exciting. It's one of those productions that you speak about often, where clearly there is passion. It's a
Yeah.
passion project, and very often you don't see passion projects of this magnitude being played out.
Said beautifully. You don't
Thank
get
you.
this sort of money to follow your dreams a lot. You know what I
Well,
mean? Like
yeah, or
we've seen
the
it
the
time and time
green
again.
light. You know how many times we'll be like, "Oh, this is gonna be your baby. Run with it. Whatever you want. You've got the thumbs up." And then it turns out that it doesn't happen. I mean, fuck, we're hearing about it like almost on a daily basis with friggin' Snyder and the Justice
Oh my
League
God, yeah. No,
debacle, right?
which again, debacle or not, it is awesome that this film that was an unquestionable failure, Snyder got all sorts of money to bring his vision to life and reshoots. That part of the story is awesome.
Yeah, no, it's true. And then
It's
obviously
just
the
best when they
the
get to do it on the
jury,
first bite at the apple, like American Gods.
the jury's out on that, obviously. But my greater point was this. This is a show that is really kind of hitting its paces now. And this is not an American Gods review. That'll be a different show. I think after the
When the
finale,
season's
maybe,
over.
yeah, maybe we'll have some additional guests to speak about it. My point was this, and this is my new, more mature, self awoken attitude, but I have found myself in that position yet again, admittedly, yet again, where I have to acknowledge I was wrong because I was the first one at the plane. I know if you got to sit down, Charlie.
Oh
It's
God.
not a common
Whew.
sentence to be escaping my lips. I was, I was the, um, I was the adaptation purist counselor. Right? They called me up. They said, "John, can you work for, can you work for free? Do you have the time?" I'm like, "You're damn right, I do. I'll be right there." I was the first one. Now I would see, I would watch, I would read, whatever the fuck. If it had my interest in it, I was gonna be there. When adaptations were not faithful adaptations, I would not shut the fuck up, and it was not in the positive. And Charlie, you were witness, you were victim to many such a rant, and I apologize for that as well. Um,
I liked it.
but American Gods, matter of fact, even we've been throwing around Ashley's name ad nauseum, but Ashley Reyes' role of Cordelia doesn't exist in American Gods. It's nowhere in the book.
She's American Gods Daryl.
That's very true. That's very true. And you hold on to that reference. So she was created for this new season. Now here's the thing. And old John, or older, or past John, I'll be careful with that term. John in the past, um, would have said, well, you know what, this is maybe a little bit of a different situation because Neil Gaiman is very much involved. So if it's his creation and he wants to tweak it, then who else is allowed to do
Yeah.
so? If Stephen King wants to put out yet another iteration of The Stand and he writes in another dozen characters, that's his prerogative. It's his baby. It's not mine. I just happen to love that baby, which
Yeah.
obviously that's my privilege and my right to do. But in this circumstance, American Gods has added new ingredients to the flavor, or for the flavor, to the pot, and Ashley is one of those new ingredients, and others. So this is a unnecessary plug. Anyone, if you haven't watched American Gods yet, if you're not caught up, do so. It's streaming on Stars. Stars has like an awesome, very very reasonable deal, like $5 or $6 a month for the next 6 months, and Afterwards, you can cancel it till the new season comes out. But that all being said, watch it. It's so worth it. But I do have to tell you, if you have not watched it yet, American Gods, the TV show, is not a note for note adaptation from the book. It just isn't. And we knew that that was kind of the direction that it was going, even from like minute 5 of episode 1, because certain characters, more attention was paid to certain characters, and to the greater benefit, I think, of the storytelling. I think that that was the right way to go. But again, not to belabor the point, it's not a point for point adaptation, not remotely. Whereas in the past, I would have fucking hated that on principle. Just the fact that it was not a point for point adaptation, I would have been wagging my finger and had something to say, like the most obnoxious son of a bitch that you knew. Not the case now. And that really got me thinking on my actual topic today, Charlie, was looking back. Have you ever, I'll post it to you like this. Have you ever held an opinion so long that when you have that realization that, like, you know what, maybe that opinion is off. Maybe I've been fighting on the wrong side of the equator this long, this many years, and then you have like that montage look back on your own loves of your life, and you're like, oh no, wait, but I loved this and I love that and I love this, and you have basically, it was like the exception that proves the rule over and over and over again. Charlie, how long do I have to be wrong before I realize being right is an option? There are so many adaptations that I fucking love
Yeah.
that are wildly different than their source material.
You and I are so similar in so many different ways, in mostly good, but a ton of bad. Because I also would periodically hop up on that kind of soapbox with you. And I'm like, well, I always made excuses for why I felt certain ways. When a long series would adapt something I loved, especially if it was a TV series that could be unlimited seasons, why aren't you just adapting it then? Jurassic Park had to make edits because it's only a 2-hour movie. They'll do a follow-up and so just that. Jurassic Park was one of the first times I was like, well, I love this book and the movie's different, but I love the movie. Well, but no, it should still be like shot for shot, scene for scene. It's different. And then as I'm wearing my Crow t-shirt and my white and black makeup on my face, I'm like, well, the comics borderline nothing like the movie.
Charlie is just
And
an
I love both.
emo son of a bitch at heart. It
It's
is
true.
just, that's why you have the hair coming over. God, it's not exact adaptation. Well, yeah, and you know what, you stole my thunder a little bit, but
Damn it,
absolutely,
I'm sorry.
yeah, you're very good at it. Walking Dead is a perfect example of it, and you know what, I'll throw it right to you, because if I know Charlie loves the Walking Dead comic, and Charlie loves the Walking Dead series,
I do.
but they are not the same.
They're I would they're a prime example of like a what if everything was a little different.
Mm.
Because I remember in the gear up to Walking Dead, before we started seeing production shots and cast announcements, I was so excited that this smaller title, which it once was, this indie book, which is what it was
Image, yeah.
getting well, again, still it's not one of the big two who got all the attention and all the money, and it was on AMC, a channel I loved. I remember from moment one they started like announcing casting, and I'm like, one of the guys from Boondock Saints is going to be in it. That's dope. I bet he's playing so and so or so and so. He's playing who now? Flip, 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 flip. That fucking guy doesn't exist. What bullshit. And I immediately wound up falling into this weird bipolar feeling of, I would see the poster for the series and it's ripped right out of the book when he's the sheriff is riding on a horse in an abandoned city, and then I'd be like, yeah, but there's a guy with a crossbow. Like, what the fuck is happening? And I
Yeah, they
remember,
stayed on book for like the first, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes maybe, and I'm including the commercial breaks, but they so wildly went off on their own tangent to great effect. I dare you. Look, this is one of those
Made a better
situations
show.
where people, if someone has a negative opinion about Walking Dead, it's because they say like, "Wow, well, it dropped off, or it's not as it was." That first season, you couldn't find a fucking zombie that would say they did not like Walking Dead, and all they did in that show was fuck up zombies.
Yeah, it became a cultural phenomenon,
No,
and the
without question.
lovers of the books
and
they
and and,
stayed.
and that's exactly right. It was so much to the point where like it was just so good so quickly that people didn't even have time to catch their breath to be like, oh, but it's different. That was like a that was an aside. That was a throwaway line in whatever review or commentary that you were happen to be reading or listening to. If someone had the audacity to say it, it was a throwaway line. But that's just one prime example. Now, for me, one of those situations. Now that's an obvious one, right? That's one of those ones where like, yeah, duh, no shit. Obviously, it's not the source material, but it also very well could have been,
Yeah,
right? To the point where like characters died or lived, characters that did exist in both the show and the comic. Sometimes they're alive in in series, but dead in the comic. Sometimes they've hooked up in one versus the other. Sometimes they're dead. And on like, there's a circumstance. Spoiler alert: there is somebody who literally is last page in the final comic of the series, because the series has wrapped up in the comics. This motherfucker wraps the comic book run, who is worm food on the TV show at this point. You're like,
like right away. It
I
felt
get
like
it.
right away.
I get it. You're different. You don't have to rub it in my face. But instantly when I thought of the topic as a possibility, I started doing a little bit of research, and honestly, to the point I forgot. Sometimes enough time passes, or like you just fall so in love with one version of something that you don't think of it as the other. I'll just ask you straight up. I'll put you right up. I'll put you right on the stand, Charlie. How do you feel about Mystery Men?
Love Mystery
How
Men.
you feel about the shoveler? How do you feel like these are characters who are like, to use a Charlieism, they're undeniable. It
Yeah,
was Mr. Furious. Like these are characters that just like caught us up.
yeah,
I feel that it doesn't get enough love. It came out just a little too early, right? Like we hadn't been. If that movie came out now, people are like,
yeah.
oh, they're
If that
taking the
was a
piss out of the
Netflix
entire
movie, yeah,
genre, and they are to great effect. Where that's the perfect way to do it. You take the piss out of something that you actually love,
yeah,
and you're putting up on a pedestal, while at the same time be like, oh, but what about this and what about that? But then also, as well as the parody in and of itself is fucking outstanding and deserves its own little pedestal right next to the
yes.
thing that is fucking with a little bit. Charlie, do you know what the source material is?
I don't actually.
Fucking Flaming Carrot comic, son.
Really?
The Flaming Carrot. Uh, the Flaming Carrot, who is a satirical character who looks exactly like his name is, giant flaming carrot running around his greater universe. That's where all the Mystery Men characters come from.
That is awesome.
It is one of
Even the
those
waffler?
source it's one of those source materials where honestly I kind of feel like how people looked at our parents. They're like, these motherfuckers came from YouTube? Really? Are you sure? Did they just sneak in the side door maybe?
Oh, that's
um
fantastic.
so yeah, so Flaming Carrot Comics, go ahead, take a moment, put us on pause, check it out. It is fucking amazing. It's amazing. So I mean, you had a little bit of a time to digest it, and granted, you wanted to throw in on Walking Dead. But are there any other examples that come to mind for you?
Well, again, this one is less. I, this one is less like surprising
Hmm.
that it was an adaptation, and I briefly mentioned it before, but the Crow comic book and the Crow movie
Yeah.
live side by side in two different, vastly
on,
different categories.
on either pillow to Charlie's head.
Yes,
Right here's the Blu-ray, over here's the comic, and Charlie's just like, nom,
it's
nom, nom, nom,
just
nom.
and what's amazing about it is some things from the comic book. Whenever people talk about Watchmen, one of the greatest graphic novels of all time, one of the greatest stories of all time, they talk about a lot how the fear was that it was impossible to adapt.
Unadaptable.
There are certain things in the Crow comic book that you're like, please don't adapt this. Please, like the name currently eludes me, despite my love of the, but like the skeleton rider, or like the Crow has a mentor in the comic book
Oh
who in the
yeah.
comic book rules, but they filmed scenes with him and it looks ridiculous. It
Yeah.
looks like a Power Ranger villain stumbled upon the wrong fucking set.
Well,
Um,
goof.
and there's something about that where every change that they made in the movie was for it made a better movie. And for
Well, yeah,
years they've
you couldn't adapt that point for point and have an even releasable movie. Like it'd be ridiculous. Also, that was by design one of those movies where it was not necessarily intended to be like a franchise.
yeah.
They're like, no, this is just the story. Like he accomplishes what he needs to do, and see you later. You know what I
And
mean?
what's very funny is there are follow-ups to that comic book. Some are fantastic, some are terrible.
Yeah, they're
All of them are
different
probably better
caps
than
and
the sequels. But I did write one. You know, I'm just saying, if Hollywood wants it, I think it'll work. But what's very funny about the Crows specifically, before I kick it back to you,
no.
they've been trying to do a closer adaptation forever. They've been trying to
Well,
take another stab at the Crow, and
over and over and
most
over.
recently,
How many
the
fucking stabs do you want?
yeah, but most recently the big talk was like, no, we're not remaking the movie, we're adapting the source material. Skull Cowboy, by the way, it just popped into my head, and I'm like, I don't want the fucking Skull Cowboy on my screen. I'm not saying it can't work. I would never say that. What I will say is like, no thanks. I'm good. I have a perfect movie. I have a perfect comic. Do follow-ups, do side stories, do whatever you need to do. But I got everything out of that meal. With Walking Dead 2 or with Game of Thrones, even something like Game of Thrones, which some people don't love the way it ends. I had Game of Thrones. Give me something else. Give me another flavor. But I'll kick it back to you. What's another one you have?
Well, I was gonna talk about Game of Thrones, but Charlie just whoop tucked that one right on his belt. He's not
Damn
even
it!
wearing a belt, and he is just
It's true.
stealing topics and tucking them under.
I'm Winnie the Pooh
Um,
it. There's nothing down here,
so,
baby.
yeah, so like you mentioned, Game of Thrones is a perfect example. It was not adaptable as written, and obviously it's an incredibly lengthy series, and they did run into a predicament considering that they were adapting something that wasn't completed when they began the adaptation. But season one is a very straightforward adaptation to book one, right? The book, A Game of Thrones, the first book in the Song of Ice and Fire series, is very faithful to season one of the show Game of Thrones. Now that's where that party ended. So they had plenty of Ice and Fire books from which to pull from, but there are some of my favorite characters in all of the series make no appearances at all in the show. There are some storylines that that were plucked from wherever there are storylines that were completely missing, locales that were completely missing. So Game of Thrones is huge, and we've talked about that. We've talked about that pretty thoroughly in the past. But I'll just pull from my list before Charlie takes it. 30 Days of Night
Oh,
is another one of those
so good.
adaptations that is not it's nowhere near a direct adaptation, which in this circumstance, yeah, they at least share the name, so you can say, oh shit, they're adapting this if you happen to be lucky enough to have read it prior. A lot of people, I think, watched it and then like ran off to watch what inspired it. And you know what, though, maybe like the term inspired by those type of that type of terminology would put some of this to bed, as opposed to like, oh, you love X, here's why. And again,
Yeah.
I'm gonna retain some of my names because my next example, again, 30 Days of Night, forget about like a Dynamite adaptation, just a period fucking awesome movies, like one of my favorite movies.
It
Whatever,
rules.
if you want to classify it under the horror genre, or even be more specific and say vampires. I mean, vampires as a fucking force of nature. This shit was like scary. It was straight up scary. But again, just a Dynamite adaptation. But I'm gonna throw to you, Charlie. What about how there have had to have been certain times where they did go in their own direction as an adaptation. They did not remain faithful, and it didn't work, right? Because it's not an always situation.
Yeah.
Sometimes they go off on a tangent, and you're like, nope, no good. And then you're sitting there, and you can't help but think like, well, maybe if they had been a little bit more faithful, maybe if they kept it in their pants at the big dance, then maybe you would have had a different result. So, like, let me ask you, what are some of the adaptations that were off the source material that you didn't like?
Uh, both, and it's weird because I have an affinity for these films, but I hate them at the same time. And that's
Love hate.
both Power Ranger movies. And that's not going from a book or a comic. It's going from like a simple enough formula. And they is that the one per show? Like for God's sakes, just throw somebody in spandex. Don't work so damn hard. What am I getting a ticket for? What is happening?
No, I'm just going ahead and we're marking the anniversary of your 500th Power Ranger reference. Congratulations, Charlie. The gift is
Fair
in the
enough.
mail.
Fair enough.
Charlie, well, you can ask Charlie what his favorite passage in the Bible is. He'd be like, Power Rangers. Charlie, who was your favorite signer of the Declaration? Power Rangers. You're
Let's
like a 3-year-old that's just learning his words.
yeah.
And Power Rangers are word 2 and word 3.
Yes.
Right? That's
That
when kids start
is
talking, 3 years old, right? Or am I just speaking for myself?
that was just
Um,
that was just your brilliant ass.
Well, they and don't you regret it now? Like, why won't this kid talk? Oh God, why won't this kid shut the fuck up? I'll take the mic back. Adaptations, a lot of times, if the adaptation is off of the source material, it also depends on how much love you have for the source material, because that's when emotions get involved. You're like, how very dare you change? There are circumstances where sometimes it goes horribly wrong and horribly right, like within the span of moments. Because
Yeah.
Stephen King, who again everyone knows that I am a devoted follower of the King, Stephen King is so difficult to adapt. Period. Like no one can say otherwise. If somebody comes to you and says, "I've got this project and it works," it's based off fill in the blank by Stephen King. I'm gonna be like, you know what? You've got my money. I will pre-purchase. I'm gonna wish you good luck.
But I'm pissed
I'm
already.
I'm not gonna bet on you in Vegas though. Odds are that it will not be successful, but I'm hoping it'll be successful, and I'm paying for it. But I'm betting against you
I'm
because it's
watching you.
hard to do. So that all being said, a tremendous short story of Stephen King's um, turned into Shawshank Redemption, a
Yes.
short story. Now, here's again shorts. If you're looking at whomever, whatever expert you want, their list of the greatest movies of all time, I guarantee you, more often than not, Shawshank Redemption is going to be somewhere in their top 10. It's just one of those movies. It is undeniable, right? And then when you look at the short story that inspired it, Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption, Charlie, it is not the same fucking thing. It is not point for point. Far from it. To the point where Morgan Freeman is white, right? They make a
Oh,
joke about, he's like, your name is Red. He's like, oh, yeah, it's my Irish heritage. Yeah, in the short story, he was a big, tall, white Irish guy.
interesting.
Yeah, so I mean that's just like that's literally the smallest of the differences. Characters come and go. Situations are totally different. They still pop up. Like there are entire groups of characters that have turned into one character for sake of storytelling.
Yeah.
I totally understand. And just staying within the universe of Stephen the King. On the same token, literally Literally, the Dark Tower broke my heart. I had to go straight to the emergency room. They needed to get the paddles ready for me because I sat there broken hearted.
I
Now, going
remember,
into that movie, you
yeah,
knew that there were certain changes that were made, and there was a whole big hullabaloo for a minute at least because Idris Elba was cast as my man, right? He was cast as Roland Deschain. Now, here's one of those situations where I fucking could care less.
yeah,
I couldn't I couldn't care less. Rather, that's the proper way. That meant shit to me. I was actually happy that they had an actor of such a high caliber, an actor that I liked so much, that I respected his work so much, to take that role. But what they did to the overall story was a fucking abortion. It was awful. You have books and books and books within the overall saga of the Dark Tower to choose from story wise, and they chose none of it.
yeah.
They chose none of
It
it.
was
It was
just so
doo
off.
doo. Again, I mean, your heart must have been broken also.
I mean, when they adapted Death in the Family, DC has a long history of brilliant animated
Yeah,
features.
their animated
Uh, and,
studios is no
and
joke.
then and then to make this feature length, because it's not a big story, but you could go into the backgrounds of what these characters are going
Sure.
through. Instead, they were like, wait, instead of doing any of that, we're gonna have Batman and Batgirl bone. Woo!
Mm.
And like literally the first 15 minutes of that film, I was like, what am I watching? This is not only bad, it is terrible. And the difference was when you saw the trailer for Dark Tower, I distinctly remember you being like, "Oh no.
Yeah.
What have they done?" When I saw the trailer for Death in the Family, it was a classic misdirect of a trailer. That trailer was put together so well. I got so excited. It looked good. It sounded good. The
They put
cast
that
was
trailer together to fool Charlie specifically. We may need to revisit this because we left a lot of meat on the bone.
I'm happy to do a part two. Happy to do a part two. My dear brother, what a fantastic topic.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, we are probably going to do a part two. So, in the comment sections of either, if you're hearing the audio of this, you can leave it as part of your review, preferably 5 stars, right before you hit that share button. Anywhere you can hear podcast action or on the video right here on Facebook. Leave a comment. Let us know if there's an adaptation you love, if there's one that shattered your soul the way Dark Tower and Death in the Family did for my brother and I. But most importantly, like, comment, subscribe. If you're watching us on the YouTube, hit that like, hit that follow. Here on Facebook, same thing. If you're watching the stream because someone was awesome and shared it, give our page a like and follow. There's a ton going on each and every week. You can see so many character designs. You can see John and I just talk shop and talk ad nauseum for 108 episodes now about all things that live in the world of Four Color Funny Books. It's US Comics HQ on all social media. Our website, uscomicshq.com. And this, of course, is US Comics Cast again, and it can be heard anywhere you can hear a podcast. My dear brother,
Mm-hmm.
my beautiful brother, what is the
Work.
only way we end each and every episode of US Comics
There's
Cast?
only one way, and they just happen to be recording another dope cover as we speak. So you just got to do yourself a favor and turn the power on, turn the volume up, tune Bad Mary in, open up the window wide, and scream out into the night sky, "Save me, space girl! We out."